We welcome you to Orange Nation Interactive alongside Darius Joshua. I'm Stephen Fonte. If you have a question for us, you can either leave them in the comments section here at localsyr.com or you can tweet them at us at Stephen Fonte, NC9, at Darius Joshua TV. We won't spend much time on the NC State games because it feels like forever ago, and we'll talk a lot about Pitt today. But just to touch on that game against the Wolfpack, it feels like a missed opportunity for the Orange. The defense held NC State to 16 points. You hold a team to 16 points in this conference, you should win the game. The SU offense, they'll let them down. Yeah, it could have been even less than that, really. Obviously, a trick play, the only play where NC State was able to get a touchdown in the game. The team nearly forced an interception after Antoine Cordy penalty that allowed NC State another shot at the end zone, and if Evan Foster had picked it off, then all of a sudden it's just 12-10 at that point. And then, of course, Syracuse had no business winning that game with the way they put on offense, but still late in the fourth quarter they had a chance to drive down and win, so certainly a missed opportunity. You look at the final stats from that game, and we have the stats listed here. Syracuse, no turnovers. Again, the yardage was pretty equal. The one stat that isn't here that stood out to me anyway was penalties. 12 penalties for Syracuse. And you can point to penalties as to directly ending drives. The first two drives of the game were ended by penalties. One on a hold on the opening kickoff really hampered them. It pushed them back. Then there was an intentional grounding on Tommy DeVito on the second drive. The final drive of the game, there were the two false starts that really hurt them. There was the Antoine Cordy penalty that again, didn't add any points to the board, but just inexplicable, on third down to have that penalty in the end zone for an unsportsmanlike conduct. Too many penalties, especially alarming, Darius, because it was coming off a bye week. Yeah, certainly, and then some of those, false starts were coming out of timeouts or things like that, just poor communication on what the snap count is. But when you add the false starts, especially on offense, which would set back Syracuse to the amount of sacks that was also not on that stat sheet, 8 sacks for NC State in that game against Syracuse, and that really set them back. There was really a couple of instances also in that last drive that you mentioned in the fourth quarter, then also earlier in the game as well, where there was a false start, a sack, and then another false start, and all of a sudden you're punting, it's 3rd and 37, and you have to just hand the ball off to O'Neal to get any kind of yardage you can get. That's not the way the offense can get any type of rhythm against any opponent, especially NC State. Yeah, we saw Sterling Hoffrichter literally on every first half drive, with the exception of the final one. Andre Schmidt came on and actually missed a field goal, hit the upright on the 44-yarder. It was that kind of game. And, you look at Tommy DeVito's stats, the stat line's a little deceiving. You look at 75% of his passes were completed. He goes for 300 yards, a touchdown. You feel like, okay, he had a pretty good game. But again, for 3 quarters, Tommy DeVito struggled. The entire offense struggled. How much was it Tommy DeVito? How much of it was the offensive line? How much of it were receivers not getting open? In your mind, how much blame should Tommy DeVito get? I think a lot of it first goes to the offensive line. Some of those times where he didn't have a lot of time to throw. The other part of it, you do have to give some credit to the NC State defense, where any instances where Tommy DeVito did have time to throw, the coverage was terrific, where no one was able to get open, and Tommy DeVito had to really just take a sack, as they say, a coverage sack in those situations. A lot of the 300 yards, that came kind of late, where the team finally got some rhythm, where they're, the 2 of their best drives in the entire game came late on in the contest, where they did eventually get a touchdown, get that field goal that you mentioned. Obviously, they missed out on a chance in the first half, really. So the offense, even though he had the 300 yards, he was certainly hesitant. We know he came off that injury he had against Holy Cross. We don't know exactly how the full extent of that, but you could tell he wasn't fully going at it. Even himself, he mentioned after the game that there were a couple times he could have gone out there, maybe, when he was running, try to stretch out, get a couple extra yards, get a first down, extend the drive kind of thing, and he would usually kind of take an easy slide down and try to avoid, that big hit, which obviously is what you want, but certainly he could have taken a couple more chances in the game. Yeah, you wonder how much that injury is still bothering him. You wonder when and if he can get back to 100% during the season's few weeks now until there'll be another bye week. Maybe it won't be till after that bye week where he's healthy. Whatever the reason, though, he looked more himself in the fourth quarter. The offense looked more like the offense that we've come to expect. They kind of simply ran out of time on that final possession. Yeah, you can't wait till the fourth quarter, or really the last minute of the third. Yeah, you can't wait that long to really start getting things going for this team. Really what they did was they tried to run the ball early, had no success. I believe it was only the 41 yards in the entire game that they had against NC State. And then eventually they decided to give up on that, go to, passing opportunities on the outside, Tristan Jackson, Sean Riley for quick hits, even O'Neal underneath in screen passes, and then Cam Jordan, who actually got a chance to shine in this game as well. So they really settled on that sort of thing because, one, they had to. They were running out of time, but it really was their most successful drives of the game. Time to get to our Twitter poll from this week. And you know, we threw this out earlier in the week, and again, I wasn't all that surprised by the results, but we asked, how confident are you that Syracuse will make a bowl game in 2019? At the beginning of the season, this seemed like a no-brainer. Now, halfway through the season with this team 3-3, we said, you know, yes, you still have 100% confidence that they're going to make a bowl game. Only 17% of people feel like that. And then 50-50, those on the fence about 40%, and obviously those, you know, who think it's not looking good, that's the highest percentage. So you've got, what, almost 80%, more than 80% of people, you know, say it's either 50-50 or less that this team's going to make it to a bowl game. So I'll ask you, how confident are you?
I like the word. I like the word just for like, it's not looking good. Just a way to be like, it's looking a little iffy there. Yeah, certainly. There's no reason to expect fans to not feel that way. Obviously, if you go out there and put up 10 points against NC State and against any opponent, really, that doesn't instill a lot of confidence that you're going to be able to get things going throughout the rest of the year. I myself do think this team is still going to make a bowl game. There are still 6 games remaining, including this Pitt game on Friday, and they're all winnable games. You know, obviously some of the contests may be a little more difficult than others when you head on the road or play a team like Wake Forest has had a pretty prolific offense this entire season. But I still think it's, you know, winnable games. Obviously Pitt is 4-2, Florida State 3-3. They've had a lot of offensive issues going back between James Blackman and Alex Hornibrook. And then you have Boston College, whose defense has been very leaky, if you will. And then obviously they just lost Anthony Brown to a season-ending injury. And then Duke, a team that has been kind of up and down themselves this year. You know, they're also 4-2, and then obviously Wake to end the year. So this team has got winnable games left on the schedule. I think there's an opportunity to get at least 3 more wins, which would get them to a bowl.
I think they're going to a bowl game as well. I think they're getting to 6 wins. But that brings up another topic that we actually talked about today on the radio show, myself and Seth Goldberg, the radio version of Orange Nation. Going into the season, we said, what would define success? We asked that question. What would define success for the Orange in 2019? And, you know, while the expectation was, you know, 8-9 wins, something like that, we settled on 7-5 was the baseline of that. Felt like, okay, it keeps the momentum going. You get to a decent bowl game and you have a chance to win an 8th game, and it keeps the momentum going. In your opinion, would 6-6 feel like success, given what we know about this team, or do you think they have to get to 7-5 for it to feel like it wasn't a wasted year?
Yeah, certainly. Coming into the year, everyone around was talking Orange Bowl, talking 8-9 wins, talking, you know, potential 10 wins with a bowl victory as well. I think, for me personally, I think 6-6, with the way things have gone this year in terms of all the injuries and what you've seen on the field, I think 6-6 is just something you got to be happy about. You got to think about, in the style that they're getting the wins, are they just escaping, or are they actually kind of putting more of their emphasis on opponents where they're like, oh, that's Syracuse football, or at least the Syracuse football we've expected under Coach Dino Babers. I think if they're winning in that way in these next 6 games, they get to 6 wins that way, and then obviously they win their bowl game as well. Now you're 7-6. You can at least feel happy that you've salvaged the year at least. You know, you look back and be like, oh, you know, I can't believe we actually, you know, as fans say, I can't believe we actually finished the year with a winning record, got a bowl victory. Some fans were ready to, you know, jump the ship and that kind of thing. So obviously if you get to 7 or 8 wins by the end of the year, looking back, I think fans, the team, all that, they would all be, I think, happy about that in the end.
I've lived in this town a long time. I'm not sure happy is the way I would describe fans. Maybe sad, maybe satisfied. I don't think they're going to be happy with 6-6, and I think that's my point, is that I think they've got to get to 7-5 for those fans to feel happy, for the majority of fans to feel like, okay, it wasn't a step back, it keeps the momentum going. And I know we're splitting hairs between 6-6 and 7-5. They got to find a way to get to a bowl game, because 5-7 and no bowl game after going 10-3, that would feel like a major step back for this program, and would stunt the growth and stunt the momentum. All that momentum you built up last year, in my opinion, a lot of that would be lost if they only win 5 games.
Yeah, certainly going into the year, obviously there was, you know, coming into the year ranked for the first time in you know, so long, obviously, for the team. They had a chance to stay ranked, obviously, but that did not turn out well with the way the non-conference went. Dino Babers actually mentioned this on Monday, though. He said he's happy you know, all the gloss and the frost is gone from 2018, and it's, you know, fully focused on this 2019 team and what it will end up being. And this is, you know, an interesting point. It feels like for 3 weeks straight now we've talked about how crucial the turning point is, and they've hit another one of those instances this week against Pittsburgh where they can really turn this 2019 season into a positive direction, or it could be 3 straight losses, and we're talking about if they're even going to get another win, you know, things like that, where you start looking further and further down the line of how bad things can get or how good things can get, depending how this week goes.
In a way, it's almost like a fresh start. First half's in the books. Okay, 3-3 didn't go the way you wanted to. Now you have a fresh start. You're back at home. It's a Friday night game. SU has played well on Friday nights. Dino Babers' biggest win was on Friday night against Clemson. Doug Marone's biggest win was on a Friday night against Louisville. Strange things happen Friday nights inside the Carrier Dome. So this is an opportunity to start the second half on the right foot. And as you mentioned, Pitt comes to town. This is a Pitt team that is 4-2, that that maybe is exceeding expectations to some degree. They've got designs on a second straight trip to the ACC title game. The way they've started, again, some close calls against teams that it shouldn't have been close against, Delaware and Ohio, but they played Penn State awfully tough within a touchdown, and they just beat Duke. They're 4-2. They beat Central Florida. This is a Pitt team, again, that's got designs on maybe the Orange Bowl, which is what SU was hoping for.
Yeah, certainly. That Delaware game, obviously Kenny Pickett did play that game. The one game he didn't play with the shoulder injury. So you can understand how it could be close, maybe not 17-14 close against a team that's obviously in the SES. So that still, they picked out the victory, though. What they'll look back to is their first game of the season against Virginia. They lost that game. That obviously could become big in the Coastal Division race for them. But Pittsburgh itself, as a team that looks different, obviously their offense is a little bit different from years past, and the defense has been pretty dominant at times. Really, that Duke game was a lot closer than it really looked like it was going to be because of turnovers on the offensive end that allowed Duke to kind of get back in that game and make it just a 33-30 victory for Pitt, when at one point they were up, I think it was 26-3 at one point, dominating Duke. So this is going to be another defense like NC State that Syracuse is going to face on Friday, where a team having so many offensive struggles, you could be worried about how they're going to match up against the Panthers.
Yeah, let's talk about both the offense and defense of the Pitt Panthers. Let's start with offense. And yeah, you said they look a little bit different. They look a lot different with Kenny Pickett, who's actually throwing the ball quite a bit more. He's second in the ACC right now in passing yards. He was only averaging about between 150 and 160 passing yards per game last year. He's around 270 right now, and a lot of that has to do with the new offensive coordinator in Mark Whipple. He's opened up the offense. It's no longer ground and pound. They're trying to move the ball through the air.
Yeah, certainly. We all know Syracuse has had issues stopping the run, but they're not going to necessarily have that issue this week just because Pittsburgh barely runs the ball at all. Kenny Pickett leads the ACC actually in passing attempts per game right now, where they're dropping back at all times trying to pass to their playmakers on the outside. You got Maurice French, Taysier Mack on the outside, two receivers who are kind of at the top of the ACC in terms of receptions and reception yards so far this season. So throwing the ball is what Pittsburgh's going to do. You're going to have to wonder if Antoine Cordy, obviously he should be there, but rather Andre Cisco, Ife Melifon. You're going to have to wonder if they're going to be there to kind of solidify some of that secondary, because they're going to be targeted and attacked throughout the contest.
Dino Babers made it sound like neither one of those guys are going to return. And he said don't read into the fact that Andre Cisco suited up and traveled for the NC State game. So it sounds like that secondary, he warmed up, and was on the sideline in full uniform, did not play, and Dino Babers said don't read into that. He doesn't expect him to be back. Pat Narduzzi said he does expect him to be back, so a little gamesmanship going on between the two coaches. You mentioned the defense and how they like to get after the quarterback. That could be a big concern for SU, given the struggles with the offensive line. They're right near the top in the entire country in sacks per game.
Yes, second in the country, in fact, in sacks per game. 27 sacks on the year, 4.5 per contest. That's really what happened against Duke. They were able to get on Quentin Harris a lot of that contest. Led to a couple of fumbles in the game, actually a fumble that ended the game, and then two that turned into points rather for Pittsburgh in that contest, where they have three, and it's not just one guy. They're kind of a defensive line like Syracuse, where there's multiple guys on the line that can get after the quarterback, and obviously we all know the troubles that Syracuse has had. They've let up, I believe it's 26 sacks in the entire year. Obviously Pitt, as I mentioned, has 27. So that's going to be a struggle. If they can utilize some of that quick pass that they did at the end of the game against NC State, they may be able to neutralize that a little bit, but they're going to be coming after Tom DeVito on Friday.
A lot of times close games will come down to a kick or come down to a special teams play, and if that is the case, then I think advantage Syracuse. They seem to have the better special teams unit. You look at Pitt's kicking game, Alex Kessman just 6 for 12 on field goals so far this season. So, again, Vegas thinks it's going to be about a field goal game. If that's the case, if it comes down to a kick here or there or a special teams play here or there, with Sterling Hoffrichter and the reigning Lou Groza Award winner on your team, I think you got to feel pretty good for Syracuse.
Yeah, certainly. And obviously, Andre Cisco did miss the one last week, but that's obviously such a rarity for him.
Andre Schmidt said Cisco.
Oh, yeah. The two Andres.
He did not play. He didn't even kick last week.
You associate the two Andres to each other so much as the All-Americans last year. It's obviously easy to make that mistake. Yeah, but certainly very different players of what they do. But Andre Schmidt did miss that kick. A rarity for him. Expect him to kind of produce in the way that he is. As Dino said, he's the most accurate kicker he may have ever seen. So a field goal game like that, I think that does favor Syracuse.
You must be doing something right when you miss one PAT and you miss a field goal from 44 yards. And everybody's like, what's wrong with Andre Schmidt? So something must be going right. All right, with all that being said, how do you expect this game to play itself out on Friday night?
Yeah, well, certainly with Pittsburgh's offense being so different this year, a lot more of a throwing attack, it actually hasn't led to many more points. I think they're second to last in the ACC in points per game. So the thing is, they can move the ball around, but they may not actually put the points on the board. What helps them is the defense puts them in short yardage situations with turnovers, or just certainly, sacking the quarterback and allowing for a short punt return, and then Mo French in the punt game return can also, give you a benefit of field position that way. So I think that if Syracuse can find some way to get its offense back on track, find a way to take advantage of some of the opportunities it may have with its athletes on the outside, they can actually put up more points against Pittsburgh and actually overcome the tough defenses they're going to face on that side and come away, looking as a team ready to kind of get back on track and as the second half of the season here starts.
We had Andrew Filipponi from 93.7 The Fan in Pittsburgh on our radio show today. He's a Syracuse grad, and he knows both of these teams awfully well, covers Pittsburgh, but still follows Syracuse quite a bit. And he said that he's curious to see how Pitt handles success. They're 4-2. They're coming off a bye week, and he said he's not sure that the bye week came at a great time. They've got some momentum, but they've had a chance to read their press clippings a little bit. And again, they're exceeding expectations, I think, right now, based on where a lot of people expected them to be at this point. I've got a feeling about SU in this game. It's a Friday night inside the Dome. This game, in my opinion, we keep saying it's an important game, and you're right, Darius. This one feels like it's enormous.
Yeah.
And we keep talking about swing game. Syracuse loses this one. You're talking 3 in a row, and then you are starting to talk about whether or not this team makes it to a bowl game. So I think SU comes out with a sense of urgency. It's a home game. I think they feed off the crowd. I think they make up for the dud that they put forth last week on national TV. I think they make up for it this week. I think SU wins this game. I think it's going to be a close contest, but I'll say 24-21. I'll say it comes down to a kick, and I'll give the advantage to Syracuse.
Yeah, certainly low scoring is for sure.
I think so.
I would not expect either team to reach 30 points. They did last year, obviously, but that game did go into overtime. And the contests that they've had in the ACC have been close on both sides.
Always been close.
The only win I think Syracuse had since they moved to the ACC has been in the Dome. That was 2 years ago. So I think that with that effect of being inside the Dome, back here in Syracuse, Syracuse has a chance to take advantage of that and really get that victory against Pittsburgh. I'm going to go low score as well. I'm actually going to go 2017. It'll be even lower than that.
All right.
Where the defense for both teams.
You think SU wins?
Yeah, I do think SU is going to win with the defense of both teams kind of coming apart or being a big factor in the contest. And really it's going to come down to who makes the least amount of mistakes. Obviously, Eric Dungy threw that pick last year in the end zone that ended the game, and they let a couple runs from Quadri Olson, Darren Hall last year, kind of allow Pittsburgh to kind of get back into it. So it's going to be interesting to see if the offense, that's the key, if the offense can actually do what it needs to do and really have success out on the field and take advantage of some of the opportunities they may have, that can lead Syracuse to a victory.
Play of the offensive line is so important. We've been saying it all year, but this game in particular, given how much Pitt likes to get after the quarterback, it's another one of these toss-up games. SU was lights out in toss-up games last year, not so much this year, just 1 and 2 in the so-called toss-up game. 7 o'clock kick on Friday night inside the Dome. Game will air live on ESPN. That's all the time we have for you. Again, if you have any questions over the course of the next week, you can leave them in the comments section, or you can hit us up on Twitter at Stephen Fonte NC9, at Darius Joshua TV. For Darius, I'm Steve. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the game Friday night, everybody.